And we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Forever Rugby on Forever Sports for today's Wednesday Rugby News Live show. We are halfway through the week. It's Hump Day, and that means we are that much closer to the weekend, that much closer to some more rugby action. And this weekend, we will be having the return of the Currie Cup. Continues. Week 2 after a very interesting week 1, some pretty big victories, a couple of teams under pressure to try and respond and to bounce back, as well as the conclusion of the Six Nations. And what a Six Nations it is, and it could go down to the final game if everything goes to according to sort of what plan, really, I think. Then I think that Ireland should be taking on England in the final match on Saturday to win the Grand Slam, knowing exactly what they will have to do. But I'm hoping that, France, for example, if they really pitch up and get that bonus point win, we'll put a little bit of pressure on them, just to sort of remind them that they can't afford to choke. They can't afford to not beat England, and they can't afford to be sloppy, because they could very well lose out if they do. But yeah, coming up in the next sort of 20 to 25 minutes, we're going to be talking about FEINBERG-MNGOMEZULU. In an interview, said he wants to try and make the World Cup squad. We're going to be talking about Springbok players back at their franchise. We're going to be talking about Mapimpi potentially on moving to France. We're going to be talking about Morné Steyn remaining at the Bulls. We're also going to be talking about a potential player revolt that Eddie Jones is facing before he even has his first test as a Welsh coach, Australian coach, and a couple of other things that are sort of floating around. So lots to talk about in sort of the next half an hour on the Rugby News show. So please do smash the like on the video. Please do subscribe to the channel as well. We'll start with the FEINBERG-MNGOMEZULU article, shall we? So it was yesterday, I think, that the interview came out, and Sasha FEINBERG-MNGOMEZULU basically sat down and had an interview where he basically said that he is very much looking at the World Cup and not ruling himself out of potentially making it to the World Cup. And at the end of the day, you've got to have the ambition. You've got to have the confidence. You've got to have the ambition. You've got to have that sort of drive to be able to get there. And this is what he had to say. He said, when they asked him about the World Cup, given the fact that he had been involved in the Springbok training camp at the end of last year, he was then asked what he would, if the World Cup's on his mind. And he said, and I quote, "I want it badly. Who wouldn't want the opportunity to play at a World Cup? But I know I have to focus on doing my job at the Stormers. Everything will take care of itself after that." He was then speaking about his position, for example. He said, "I don't mind starting in at 10, 12, or 15, which I think is one of the reasons that the Springboks do really sort of rate him." He said, "But in my heart, I'm a fly half. My strong points are the characteristics of a fly half. My kicking game is one of my strengths. So it's a fly half where you got to play at that to that a bit more. Fly half is the position I love the most, but game time is the most important thing. Wherever I'm needed in the team, I'm there." Yes, so Sasha FEINBERG-MNGOMEZULU is desperate to make the World Cup, and the question is, what would have to happen for him to actually make it? And at the end of the day, injuries is the only sort of potential avenue into that World Cup squad for him. I think that we need to be very careful with the way we treat certain youngsters, like Sasha FEINBERG-MNGOMEZULU, like Kanan Moody, maybe moving forward, like Ruan Venter, for example, at the Lions. These are players who have come through the junior systems and have sort of taken to professional and rugby very easily, and they find a lot of very quick success. And so, rightfully so, there's a lot of excitement about them. There's a lot of hype about them. But we always got to be careful, don't we? We don't want to put these players under unnecessary pressure. We don't want to expect too much from players who are not ready to play at certain levels. Now, last year, and I'm reckon about June, July, when Sasha FEINBERG-MNGOMEZULU had played those 2 games in the URC, where it looked very comfortable, and he had a really good junior Springbok tour. They were all suddenly clause. They say, "Well, just send him to the end of your tour. We need a fly half. If you're good enough, you're old enough." And I think everybody was very, very happy and very keen to see what he could do in a Springbok shirt. The reality is, I think he then had a couple more URC games, and he struggled in a couple of them. I think he's had some good games, had some bad games, but I think consistency is his problem, which is what you expect from somebody that age, especially playing in such a difficult position. If he is playing in there at fly half, for example, So the kid's 21 years old, turned 21 in February, so he's very, very young and very inexperienced. It hasn't even been a year since he, made his professional debut. So I do think that he is going to play many, many, many tests for the Springboks. I do think he's going to develop into an international player. I do think the Stormers have got a pretty prodigious talent on their hands in FEINBERG-MNGOMEZULU. Will he be ready for the World Cup in November, in September, October? I don't think so, personally. I don't think that. I think that even with injuries, I think that he is pretty low down on the pecking order to potentially get into that squad. I think that they very much brought him in at the end of last year, and again, there was sometimes potentially sort of debate about sort of external factors. There were rumors that Eddie Jones in contact, and we're looking at trying to see how we could rope him into playing for England, for example. And so people were then suggesting that maybe that's one of the reasons that he was part of the squad, because people, the Springbok coaches wanted to show him that they believe in him, that they want him to stay and play for South Africa, and that he's part of their plans. That might have been the case as well. So look, at the end of the day, to be included in the Springbok squad at 20 years old is no small feat, and there's no doubt that the Springbok management do rate him. But are you going to take him to the World Cup ahead of Manie Libbok? No, you're not. Are you going to take him to the World Cup ahead of, Alton Yankees, for example, if he's fit and ready? No, you're not. And that's the reality. I think he's very low down in the pecking order. I think that even, for example, Jan Goosen is somebody they probably almost backed probably before him. At the end of the day, we're talking about a kid who needs to start playing rugby. He needs to start playing, week in, week out at a URC level. He needs to start performing consistently at the URC level before we could even talk about him playing international rugby. If the World Cup was next year, then we might be sitting there going, maybe if he does start to play a lot of URC towards the back end of the season, he becomes a regular starter at the beginning of next season, he has a full URC ahead of him, then maybe we could be in the radar. But at the end of the day, if you are not part of that Springbok training squad that has been put together for the last 3 weeks, and you are and you're a South African-based player, and then I include the 6 players that were included into the lineman camp, the likes of Evan Roos, for example, Joseph Dweber, Manie Libbok, Herschel Yankees, they were all sort of called into an alignment camp this past weekend. If you're not part of that group of 20 players, you're not part of the World Cup plans. Things can change, obviously. Injuries happen and things can change. When you think about it, go back to the 2011 World Cup, where New Zealand's, fifth choice Flaharp ended up playing the final. His name escapes, but I think he was literally fishing at the time, and got a call up because of all the various injuries. And Aaron Cruden started and went off injured. Stephen Donald, and Stephen Donald ended up playing, the 60 an hour of a World Cup final that he was never going to be anywhere near. But he was only there because I think it was obviously Dan Carter went down. I think Colin Slade went down. And then obviously Aaron Cruden went down. So all of a sudden he went from not even being within the initial squad to starting a World Cup final. So, you can't ever dismiss the idea that he might, that he definitely won't go to the World Cup. But for me, there's just far too many players ahead of him, and he's not played enough right now. And again, for me, it's not necessarily an age thing, but it's a pecking order thing. If he had played last year, if he made his debut, for example, Kane Moody could go to the World Cup. Kane Moody's part of the World Cup plans right now. So is Spring Corsi. So Kane Moody has got an outside chance of going to the World Cup. He's played for the Springboks a couple of times. He's scored a try. He's got a genuine chance of going to the World Cup because he's got, I think 3 or 4 Springbok caps now. He went to the Lion camp. They look at him, and he's actually younger than FEINBERG-MNGOMEZULU. So for me, it's not necessarily an age thing. It's about pecking order. It's about being within the structures, and it's about being ready. So he's played 3 times for South Africa. Played against Australia. I think he played then both games against Argentina. But once again, in the case of Kane Moody, as soon as the likes of Ches and Colby were back, and Pimpy and stuff like that, he suddenly didn't play at all. So he's also pretty far down the pecking order. So somebody like Kane Moody's got a small chance of making the World Cup. I don't think FEINBERG-MNGOMEZULU's got any chance really, barring enough injuries to all of a sudden have to call an emergency 21-year-old into the World Cup. And I think that deep down, I don't think he genuinely thinks he has a chance. But at the end of the day, I suppose, you're asking him, and you sit there saying, yeah, well, why not? Why can't I? Why can't that be my aim? Why can't I work week in, week out to try and make sure I'm starting for the Stormers, make sure I'm putting in performances, and make sure that, if there is the smallest chance, then I'm going to give myself the best chance of that smallest chance. So I like the attitude. I like the ambition. Again, I do think he's going to play many, many games for the Springboks, and I will predict a Springbok debut in the next 2 years. I think he will be 22, 23 when he makes his debut. So I do think it'll be a post-World Cup project, but it's just not going to happen for me just yet. And people on the poll kind of agreeing with it. So Brave Star saying he's nowhere near World Cup ready, hardly URC ready. Says definitely needs to have regular URC game time first. Lodisto says at this stage it's unlikely with Pollard, Willems, and Money all fit if it's not going to happen. Birchmax says I think Jordan Henderson should be ahead of him in the pecking order, but not for this Rugby World Cup. Next one definitely him and FEINBERG-MNGOMEZULU. Yeah, 100%. I think Jordan Hendrikse is obviously also somebody who is going to play for the Springboks eventually. He has just had another surgery and injury, so he's out for the season, which is really frustrating because every single time he starts to play towards the best of his abilities, he tends to get injured, and obviously we have to all start again. I do back the shout though. I think Jordan Hendrikse and FEINBERG-MNGOMEZULU are the two future big sort of prospects. And you've got the likes of Cade Voliter, Kurt Bosch, if they want to look at bringing him back. People are talking about Buddha Chainlamy, would step up. Sia Masuku's a very nice fly half as well. So there are plenty of other players out there and fly halves who are sort of stepping up and wanting to sort of put their hands up. But I do think that Jordan Hendrikse and FEINBERG-MNGOMEZULU right now are probably your sort of bright prospects for the future. In terms of other news, there are some rumors that Makazole Mapimpi could be the latest player to leave the Sharks. Apparently, Mapimpi as well as Akanya were targeted by French giants Clermont, who decided not to go after them because of their Springbok test schedule. However, apparently Mapimpi is still being looked at by a number of French league clubs, and apparently he's still quite high on the list for potential signs after the World Cup. At the end of the day, I think this could actually happen. He's 32 years old, is Makazole Mapimpi. Now, he's going to go to the World Cup. We've got no doubt about that. Maybe even a little bit about doubt about whether he will still start ahead of, for example, Kirky Arendse. But he turns 33 in July. So he's going to go to the World Cup at 33. So the next World Cup is going to be 37. So for me, for somebody who's played in South Africa for pretty much his entire career, apart from a short stint in Japan, I think he will go. I think that he'll go to the World Cup and then he'll link up with somebody else afterwards. And why not? At the end of the day, you talk about players, deserving that sort of last final sort of paycheck and stuff. He's done everything he needs to do with the Springboks. At the end of the day, the defending the World Cup is his last sort of Springbok mission. It's not like there's a British Lions series looming in the next 2 years. So, I think he should go. I think he will go, and he'll go and earn some money and go and play in the French league for a couple of years. Maybe he'll come back and play a couple of years here before he retires. But whilst you're still in your prime and still can make it and play at the highest level, and you've got no more international things to achieve apart from just playing for your country a few more times, why not go and make some money? So we'll keep you updated on that. I said nothing official at this stage, not even too many teams that are being linked to them. But apparently a lot of the top 14 sides are currently looking, a lot of them are signing wings at the moment. Jack Noel's gone there, for example, Anthony Watson. There's lots of, I think Monty Awani's going in there, potentially going there. So Pro 14 are looking at a lot of wingers are being, linked with moves to the Pro 14. And with somebody who's got the strike rate that Makazole Mapimpi has. He's got 110 points, in 36 matches. That's just absolutely ludicrous. Credit to him because he, as I said, he scores tries for fun. And why would you not want to have somebody? To score 22 tries in 36 matches is an incredible strike rate. He's scoring more than a try every second game. And he is one of the most lethal finishers in the world when he's playing at his best. And for me, I think he's become very much a very good all-round player. Improved a lot of his various skill sets. So I think he'd thrive in most leagues, to be honest. So why not go earn some money, go and get that final nice big paycheck. Some other interesting news is that Western Province welcomed back their Springboks this week. We saw Damien Willemse, Steven Kitshoff, Frans Maherbe, all in training with the Western Province. It doesn't look like they're going to play this weekend for Western Province against the Bulls. But apparently they were just wanted to get involved. Apparently that they obviously now the Springbok stuff has all come to an end. That finished on Sunday. And apparently they just were very keen to get back into the setup. Go and help people prepare for this weekend. And you want to see that. You've got lots of young players, for example, who are going to play in the Currie Cup. A bit of sort of a second string side. So in terms of preparation, it's really good to see that the likes of Damien Willemse, Steven Kitshoff, Frans Maherbe, they can do live scrumming. Damien Willemse, they can be sitting there running at them and really helping them prepare to be as prepared as possible to try and beat the Bulls on Friday. It's a struggling Bulls side, so Western Province will very much go into the game as favourites. Good to see that they are back within the setups, for example, because a lot of talk about the fact that they've really struggled without them. The URC will return next weekend. In terms of our South African fixtures, it is Scarlets versus Sharks, Benson versus Lions, Ulster versus Bulls, and Leinster versus Stormers. So it's a pretty big game. Leinster versus Stormers, the interesting one, next week Friday at 9:30. So that will be more what they're working for. In fact, I think they actually leave this weekend, so it will very much won't be involved on Friday. But good to see them having a good hit out there because they are training as one squad. It's not the Western Province aren't doing it as two different squads. They're very much doing it as one sort of whole collective squad, and then sort of later on in the week they kind of break up into the two different sort of segments. Another interesting South African rumor transfer really is that Morné Steyn is apparently in talks to stay at the Bulls. Now, he will not be playing though. So he is retiring at the end of the season, but that is why the whole sort of Morné Steyn Foundation sort of send-off thing is happening at the moment where I think it's for every point or how many tickets or whatever sold, stuff like that, a certain amount is being donated towards the Morné Steyn Foundation. But he has, however, confirmed that he is in talks with the Bulls to remain at the Union in a coaching capacity as a kicking coach. Now, why wouldn't you? I think you'd be really, really stupid to have somebody like Morné Steyn, who's been in every single possible situation, is one of the best kickers in Springbok history, if not, in World Rugby history, and wants to stay with you. So the Bulls are doing the bright thing, and they're going to try and tie him down to a coaching contract. And he says he wants to get back at the end of the day. So according to, this was him, I want to translate a quote from Network 24. He says, I'm in talks with the Bulls to stay with the team as a kicking coach. Kicking plays an increasingly important role in modern rugby, and especially in the United Rugby Championship. I have often seen in the past how teams kicking is not to their liking in pressure situations, and this is their Achilles heel. These days, your counterattacks depend so much on good kicking, and without that, you can't put the opposition under pressure. I've had the idea for quite some time, and I believe there's great need, especially at school level. It is necessary that we start developing kickers at young age. So it looks like hopefully he obviously will be working with the Bulls, but I think we'll also be doing a lot of work with various schools, with various junior provincial structures as well, and really sort of driving a very strong kicking program, which will hopefully produce our next Morné Steyn, our next Frans Steyn, the players who are, operating at 85 to 90% off the kicking team, but also in open play that are able to peg back opposition, that will be able to manage the game from a boot perspective. So that's going to be a very important signing, I think, for the Bulls. And in a time where the Bulls have not too much to celebrate, I do think they managed to hold on to Morné Steyn as a kicking coach moving forward will be a minor victory for them. I think it's a pretty big victory. I think you'll make a brilliant coach. But before we move on to some of the comments, Brave Star saying people must go and take the money. Janae Clayton says, how you bro? Very well, thank you. Do you think that we as South Africans will play against New Zealand domestic teams again? I don't think so, unless they sort of looked up bringing in that Club World Cup vibe. I don't think we're going to see Super Rugby in any sort of form or fashion that we have seen in the past coming back. I think it's pretty much done for the time being. I do think we'll probably see, maybe friendlies. We could have exhibition matches, Stormers versus Crusaders at Twickenham type thing that we have seen in the past. But I don't think we're going to be seeing a league such with those teams involved anyway. Brent House says he's going to have a lot of work to do. He was far from impressed in the SAA setup. Yeah, I think we're talking about FEINBERG-MNGOMEZULU now. Again, I think there's a lot of talent there, but he needs to settle in at this level. Contender coming in with his team predictions saying Pimpy should be tried at 13. Him and Ahmed 12 can create some magic, very much like a video with Arani or Fainganuku. I wouldn't touch Pimpy at 32 years old. I just think you must just leave him there at 11, let him do what he does. Let him cook, as they say. I wouldn't get too experimental and start throwing him out at 13. Some other interesting news ahead of the Six Nations this weekend. Stuart Hogg and Russell have been ruled out for Scotland, which is a very big blow for them. Ollie Chess has been ruled out for England. Liam Williams and Scott Bolden have been ruled out for Wales. So quite a lot of injuries happening across the various sides ahead of the final weekend. We will be live for all 3 matches this weekend, so it should be a really cool close to the Six Nations. And speaking of international teams, Eddie Jones is apparently facing a player revolt despite not having even coached a single game for Australia as of yet. Apparently this has got to do with his obsession with the rugby league players. There's been a lot of coverage about the fact that apparently Rugby Australia are looking to try and contract certain league players and try and bring them across to rugby union. And apparently a lot of the players are getting very frustrated with this and saying, well, are we not good enough type thing? And you know, he's so obsessed with bringing these league players in. He's not focusing on the union players. And apparently a lot of the agents are coming out and saying that, you know, that he's not backing his players, that he's not invested in a squad. And apparently the players are not happy. And they reckon that a player revolt could be on the cards. So I don't know what that means, whether that means players are going to start boycotting, players are going to start leaving in the huff and going overseas. You know, Pete Sarno, for example, has gone to Bordeaux for next season. But apparently they're not happy with him. And the reason they are not happy with him is because they said there's no loyalty. So this was an agent. His name is David Rawlings. And one of those clients he has is fullback Tom Wright. And that's what he had to say. He said, we're sitting here waiting to get a deal done after the World Cup. This is the current Wallaby fullback. Yet they're talking about all the NRL players and $1 million offers. What about looking after your own? Loyalty works both ways. Look at the sacrifice the players have made in rugby. They all took a 50% pay cut during COVID and didn't get a pay back as the league guys did. Yeah, so they're just basically saying that, you know, how can you be going after league players? How can you be looking at throwing money at league players when, you know, our contracts are sorted? You know, we've been doing the job for the last few years. I think it's a little bit, I can understand a certain amount of frustration. I also think that if players are going to make you a better side, if you can go and find certain players, if you can find anything that's going to give you a boost, why not pursue it? So I can understand the frustration and that certain, you know, players or agents or whatever saying that they feel that they're not being given, that no one's actually really backing them and they're not being given contracts, stuff like that, and how dare they? But also, I think if there's an opportunity to bring in a couple of league players which are really going to boost your side, and you just refuse not to do it out of blind loyalty, I also think that's a good put. So I think it probably needs to be, as always, you know, somewhere in the middle is probably where you want to be. You know, you want to be signing down your best Australian players, your current ones. You know, your likes of a Pete Sarno leaving is not ideal. You want to be making sure that Tom Wright is signed and sealed. But at the end of the day, why wouldn't you also, you know, start to put your feelers out there and see if you can maybe convince some really talented players who you believe will add a lot of value to the team to come to the team and actually be part of the setup. Contenders say they should create a 32-team Champions Cup, 24 from Europe, 8 for Super Rugby, brings in round of 16 2, meaning more rugby for people to enjoy. Nice to see Leinster versus Crusaders or Racing versus Chiefs. Yeah, I think logistically that would just be an absolute nightmare. If you think about the time zones and the travel and stuff like that. It's bad enough at the moment between us. We're in the same time zone. So that's pretty much a wrap of all the news that's happening. So to recap, we're talking about, female players back at Western Province will not be playing this weekend, but they are helping out with preparations. Stevie FEINBERG-MNGOMEZULU said that the World Cup is very much a dream of his, and he'd love to make it happen. Mornay is set to stay at the Bulls as a kicking coach. Eddie Jones facing a potential player revolt due to his continued pursuit of rugby league players, as opposed to sort of signing down the current rugby union players to deals. And it's a quick update on some of the Six Nations injuries. Wales have lost the likes of Liam Williams and Scott Baldwin. Scotland have lost the likes of Finn Russell and Stuart Hogg. And Ireland have lost quite a few injuries. England have lost, I think, Ollie Chess and a couple others. So, we'll know more about the injury news tomorrow when these teams are announced. We will have all our previews and how to watch videos out there tomorrow. And we'll be live this weekend. We're going to do a bit of a poll over which sort of games are really sort of tickling your fancy in terms of what we want to try and cover. We will probably be live for Lions versus Pumas. That's at 5 o'clock on Friday. Hopefully we'll be live for Western Province versus Bulls. We'll be live for all 3 Six Nations games on Saturday. We'll also be live for Formula 1, by the way, the Saudi Arabia Grand Prix. We are in Jeddah this week. And so hopefully we will be able to... hopefully you guys will join Mark and Reese. We'll be live throughout the weekend covering the Formula 1 as we look to try and expand our offering a little bit, bring in some other sports and stuff like that. But obviously, if you are here for the rugby, as you can see, it's not going anywhere. And you'll still be able to get all your rugby news, all your rugby content right here on Forever Sports. So please do smash the like on the video and subscribe to the channel as well. And I'll chat to you guys all soon.